Hi friends, it's me, Catherine. Welcome to another edition of Garden2TableTV. Today we are going to learn how to prune an apricot tree. This particular tree is named Jackie after a dear friend in Florida named Jackie, who I've known since I was 13 or 14. We met actually in junior college when I got in a little bit ahead of schedule. And yeah, we just became best friends and have stayed close ever since. She even would come out and visit me in Spain, where I had a winemaking project out there with some friends and family members. And yeah, anyway, so we've known each other a very long time. Unfortunately, she lives across the country in Florida, but I think about Jackie every time I walk by her apricot tree here at the Magical Paradise Retreat. So apricots are a little tricky in their pruning, so we're going to give you all the tips and tricks and ins and outs of them. First thing we're going to do, of course, is look for any branches that are crisscrossed or cockeyed and cut out those, and we're going to look for dead wood and remove that. And then we're going to go into the different fruiting buds and how to look for them, and what to be careful about when pruning an apricot tree so you don't end up without a harvest one year, which is easy if you cut off the wrong branches. All right, so we're going to go right in there and get to work. Apricot trees are traditionally pruned during the winter months while they're dormant, like I'm doing here. However, keep in mind that some orchardists do prefer to prune apricot trees in particular right after fruit harvest in the summer months. So while they're still leafed out, believing that opens them up to less disease pressure than they would be exposed to by pruning them now with fresh cuts on them during the wet winter months. I really let these get a little bit too high. I do like tall trees, but you know, I'm just a little person. Ladders are dangerous, so it's a good idea to not let them run away quite this much. So we're going to be giving these 3 apricot trees a major haircut, and we're going to start working on that right now. So here in the apricot tree named Jackie, we've got just so much heavy growth. Very, very busy tree. We're going to thin out so many of these shoots. Keep in mind with the apricot, you really have to know which apricot you have. This happens to be an aprium, but very similar growth pattern to the apricots. I've just finished pruning these 2 standard apricot trees. They're different varieties, and on the different varieties of apricots, you're going to have a completely different way of pruning for fruit growth. So all these kind of reddish 1-year-old growth shoots, on most apricots, the fruit is going to be the flowers, and therefore the fruit are going to be setting on the tips. So unlike the peach, unlike the pear and the plums, we are not going to be touching those 1-year-old growths. Now on some apricots, on most apricots, they're going to be setting at the top of these shoots. On some apricots in the middle, and some apricots at the base. So unless you know what you've got, don't monkey with the 1-year-old shoots, other than to, you know, top your tree off so you can give it the haircut so that you don't get too tall, because you don't want the tree to become unmanageable. So we're going to be removing some of those shoots that are just too high, and they'd be too high to reach and too heavy for the tree when they have fruit on them. Other than that, we're going to be looking to see which are the fruiting buds and which are the leaf buds. The difference between on the 1-year-old growth is that the fruiting buds are going to be much bigger and fatter than the leaf buds. Now this tree is early enough in its development here this year. We're still in early February, that it's going to be really hard to see which would be fruiting buds versus leaf buds. But if we waited a couple more weeks, it would be more obvious. But I've got a big heat wave coming here, which we're already in this week, so I really can't wait. So here, these are probably fruiting buds in the middle and leaf buds on the sides. But this will become more obvious again in a couple weeks as these buds start to push out. But you can see how much is crisscrossed and kind of just too thick. It's like a forest in here. So we're going to be deciding which 1-year-old shoots to remove and which ones to leave. And then we're going to be just topping a little bit off that side of the tree where it kind of ran away. And we're going to be looking for any dead wood and cleaning out the center a bit so it's a little bit more open. But again, we're going to be using a lot more caution when we're pruning off all these 1-year growths. We're not going to be snipping them back unless we know our variety of apricot and know that it sets fruit lower down, because most varieties are setting at the top of the 1-year growth. So be very careful with your apricots. Do a little bit of research before you start hacking away. But one thing we do know as we don't want the branches clicking and clacking and rubbing against each other and being this thick. This is just going to be too thick for optimum fruit production and sugars development in the apricots, because we need the sun to get in there and sweeten up these fruits once they set. All right, so we're going to get right to it and show you how it's done. Now, these branches that aren't actually productive or doing anything, you see there's no, definitely no fruiting buds on these, so we can thin those out and take these guys down. And let's just clean the tree up that way, because you know we're not taking off fruit. Even these, again, this one's not doing anything. Don't see any buds. Go ahead and take that off and take that off. And I may just take that down. I'll leave above the fruiting bud there. But those guys are going to interfere as they grow. And here's another one that can go for sure. And these guys are interfering a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and take him off. And we're just looking mostly for stuff like that here as we go through and just carefully thin out branches that aren't, and definitely aren't productive and or aren't going to help the overall shape. Here's another one that can go because it's not serving any purpose, doesn't have any buds forming, and looks like it's on its way out. This one too. Get this tree a little bit more cleaned out this way. Here's another one as well. And then we're going to let these new shoots come up, because you know eventually they're going to grow up. First of all, they're the 1 year growth with the blooms, and secondly, eventually they are going to take over as the older branches sag and die or get cut off. The new inner growth will replace those big branches. So we kind of always keep our eye out for which are the best to leave and which are the ones that should get cut. All right, so we're done with Jackie, our apricot, which is actually an aprium. I don't know if I mentioned that. So this particular tree is a cross between an apricot and a plum. So we've got plum-like fruiting spurs, and then we've got the 1 year growth producing obvious flower buds. So we were really careful. We really tried to leave all the 1 year growths intact, except we did thin them out significantly. As you can see, they're just way less. So 2 of us pruning this tree took about an hour, I think. And we got up there, took a little off the top too. But you know, we really had to make some hard choices. Here we could probably take out a few more of these. That's still a little thick. But overall, the trees opened up. We've tried to preserve as much of the fruiting wood while not having too many branches that were click-clacking. We did do the click-clack test, of course, and went around and checked every branch and listened for any click-clacking, and wherever we heard it, we made a choice which branch was going to go off. That's the final thing we do before we know we're done. And that's a pretty clean apricot tree. And we could see a lot of little pink blossoms already just starting to push. So I think we're going to get a lot of blooms. And again, we had to make some interesting choices. So here's a very plum-like fruiting spur, right? So some apricots do fruit on the old wood. You can already see that blossom's going to open. But these are very plum-like fruiting spurs. So we're leaving all those. And then we also did find branches, you know, where we have the more typical blooms developing at the tips of the 1 year orangey growth. So we had a real combination here. Make sure to really read up on your apricot tree before you prune it to make sure you don't lose all your harvest. All right, that's it for today's episode, and we look forward to seeing you on the flip side.